All right. Well, the first question I'll ask is because this episode will be more like miscellaneous and the last part of your life. So let's
Okay.
actually move the mic here. So my first question is: did you have like what are some eventful job interviews that you have given and you have been to? Like what are the more interesting ones?
Well, we could spend a long time on that. When I was at Houston National, one of my later jobs was the training program. So I hired all the young people that came into the bank to go on management training program. So that was a lot of fun. And a couple of those young men followed me when I went to other banks, and so they worked for me. And so, as to my interviews, I guess the most pertinent one was when I appeared before the board of Houston National Bank to
Just don't want to mess with
apply for the scholarship. So that's pretty much it.
So that you've already told that one, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I have.
Because is that really the only interview you really ever had to go to? Because then you were just at the bank and you worked for the same, or you didn't? Because did you work for the same like bank the whole time, or how did? Because I'm not. You kind of explained this last episode, but it's kind of hard to keep track.
Sure.
So like, explain like the company and stuff.
Well, the only real interview I had was for that first job, which was well over 20 years at Houston National. But on the others, though, I was representing investment groups to buy the bank, so I really wasn't interviewing for anything.
Yeah.
I was just negotiating the purchase of the bank.
Okay. So was there ever like what was like a what's your favorite interview that you gave, or like or not or like someone that you interviewed?
Well, I'm trying not to repeat what we've said in earlier interviews. Uh, I think I told you that I hired a young man of African American descent, and to my knowledge, he was the only one in banking at that time, and his name was Ricky, and we developed a nice little friendship. And actually, he went with me to two banks. He followed me from one bank to another, and he wound up with a good job out on the West Coast later on.
Yes. You did talk about that. Okay. Okay. Well, that's cool. So how was what was like the last like 5-10 years of your career? What were you doing then?
Well, son, I tried retirement at in my late 40s. We sold a group of banks, and I thought, well, might as well just go ahead and retire. And I made the mistake of having an office, and so people would contact me to do different things, analyze businesses and audit businesses, and so from that first retirement, I wound up getting an offer to manage these 15 country banks. And so that was the last roughly 10 years of my career. I came out of retirement and took those 15 country banks and did that for about 10 years. And we sold them to what is now Wells Fargo.
Oh.
Uh, First banks were sold to Bank America, and those country banks were Wells Fargo. And so that was, you referenced 5 years. Well, that was the last 10 years
Yeah.
out in the country.
Okay. Well, what made you like take that job and come out of retirement?
Well, I decided I was working harder in retirement than I would with a full time job because uh, when you're self employed as a consultant, uh, and you only have a secretary as an employee. I mean, you have to do everything. So plus it was really a financially interesting proposition because it was a big company, and they had lost about $18 million a year before Texas banks were in terrible trouble.
Well, what? This was in the 90s
Well, it
or
was.
late 80s.
I'll have to think a minute, son, when it was. It was in the early 90s, late 80s, and then on into the 90s. That's right.
Okay.
Because I retired finally and definitely in my late 50s, so that would have been almost 30 years ago. So
Wow.
that would have started back in the 80s and ended in the 90s.
Okay. And of all the jobs that you had, like at the bank and stuff, what was your favorite position that you had?
Well, probably my favorite was the first time I was president and chairman of the board at Heights State Bank. Still in Houston. I didn't have to move, or there was no trauma involved, and it was, it was a first. It was the first time I was president. It was the first time I put an investment group together, and the first time I had a voting trust drawn to actually control the bank. And then ultimately, 5 years later, we sold it. It is what is now Bank America. So that was my favorite,
Okay.
and I enjoyed the Heights. It was a fun place.
Yeah. So I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but when you were at your final position, when you were like, because what did you say you were? You were over a bunch of different banks. What were you?
Yes, 15 country banks.
What was your like position called? Like what was like if you came into one of the banks, what would you be?
Well, it was a bunch of different positions. I was a senior officer in the holding company, and then I was chief executive officer of all the banks. I had a local man or woman as president, so we needed a local personality and long range resident as the local president, because I might only get to a bank once a week with 15 of them.
Yeah.
That would average 3 banks per day, and so it's even possible I didn't get to a bank in a given week.
Okay, that's interesting. So like, how far were like all the banks from each other?
Well, they were scattered. The northernmost bank was in Bastrop near Austin, and then they stretched all the way down to Victoria. So it was a pretty good little drive, but they were scattered. We had Schulenburg and Bastrop and Hallettsville and Gonzales and Westhoff and Smiley and Cuero. I don't have and how many more that
Yeah.
totaled 15.
So, like, you would have to drive every day to one of these, or how would that work?
Well, that's right. Our ambition was to sell them, so I really didn't want to move, because ultimately we wanted to profit from the sale of the banks. So I would leave on Monday morning and typically go to Schulenburg, maybe on to Gonzales later in the afternoon. My home office was Gonzales, and then Schulenburg was the closest to Houston, so I'd try to get back there by noon on Friday, so I could get back home then.
Yeah. So, what like you were doing a lot of driving then? So, what car were you driving during that time?
Well, I drove several. The first car I had out there was a Honda Accord, like the one we got for your mother,
Yeah.
and then
Oh, you had like matching ones? Yeah.
and then I wrecked it, and so I bought a new car for grandmother, and I drove her Cadillac. It was a big, good, heavy car.
How did you wreck your car?
Well, I was going to a loan meeting early one morning, and it was dark, and they were reworking the highway, and they had this big old machine that mulched the pavement, And so I ran into a stretch of it at speed, and the car just couldn't couldn't accommodate it. So I went off in a ravine and rolled the car over several times.
Ooh. What, did you get injured?
Well, not. I was shaken up, but and I had to go to the hospital for
Yeah.
a few days. But it was not a big deal.
So you didn't have an injury, or like, what did you have to go to the hospital for?
Well, I had some back trouble out of it, and some
Yeah.
glass got in one of my eyes.
Ooh.
So
Like, did the ambulance show up, or did you have to call it, or?
no, people on the highway stopped and called
Yeah.
called an
Wait, so
ambulance.
you were driving. There was molt. So say that part again.
Well, you know, a paved highway is smooth, and your tires will adhere to
Yeah.
it. But they had mulched it up. It was like gravel. They were going to repave it, and so they had broken it all into little bitty pieces. So when my car hit that stretch, the
Did you skid?
yeah
Like,
went
oh yeah, man.
went sideways.
That was pretty scary.
Well, it all happened so fast. I didn't have time to
Yeah.
get scared.
That makes sense. So you mentioned selling your banks to Bank of America and to Wells Fargo, and nowadays most of the banks are like big chains that are like all over America or whatever. How did that kind of shift? Because it like I don't know, the way you make it sound is like back in the day that it was more like local and stuff. So like, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, see, these big holding companies like Wells Fargo and Bank of America try to enter a market, and they want penetration as quickly as they can get it. So the easiest way is to buy some existing banks rather than trying to start new banks and grow them, which of course was our ambition from the beginning. Take troubled banks and correct their problems and sell at a nice profit. If we bought for $1, well, our ambition would be hypothetically to sell for $5.
So when you were first working in the bank, did you know about Wells Fargo and you knew about Bank of America? Did you know about did you know about Chase? Did you know about all those big banks that are around today?
Yes, yes. Banks have a relationship with each other. Banks have banks, just like people do, because
Interesting.
they're medium-sized banks can't do everything, and so they have upstream big bank correspondents that they contract with to maybe do some data processing and some international work. They have branches in foreign countries, and my banks were all U.S. banks.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they're all Texas banks.
So was that a thing that was going on when you were first in the industry? Like bigger banks would be buying the smaller banks, or was that more like in the later stages of your career?
Well, it really accelerated because in the big early part of my banking, a bank could not branch. There were no branches. You could have one location and a drive-in facility that's within 600 feet. So in those days, you had a really protected franchise.
By the law?
Texas law then changed.
Oh, it was Texas law.
Yeah, it was Texas
Okay.
law. You could not branch in Texas. But then toward the end, you could.
Do you think that was a good law, a good change, or what do you think?
Well, the industry was a lot safer in those days because you could keep your finger on one bank rather well, but if you have, it's just like when I had the 15 banks, I couldn't spend much time at each one, so I had to have skilled personnel in every bank and
Yeah.
check on them when I came in.
So it was more difficult. But did you, the bank did it make a lot more money because of all the branches and stuff?
Well, we really never branched. We had a holding company, and the holding company owned each bank.
So it's so the bank owned the holding company, or how does that work?
Well, the reverse. The holding company owned all the banks. the bank could not have a direct affiliation, but it could be owned by the same company.
And was that going on before like you could have branches?
Yes.
And so was it kind of similar in ways like to even it was
Well,
basically the same thing. It was just the
well, when
opposite.
you started to branch, it was drastically different because it, the career opportunity was not so definite, so well defined. If you were in one big bank, you could see where you were going. You, you had to wait till either the bank grew or someone retired or quit to get a promotion. Uh,
Yeah.
so I loved the time I was in it, but I'm glad I'm out of it now. I would not
Oh.
care to be in a branching arrangement.
So is because that was going to be one of my questions. So that law is the reason that like Wells Fargo and Bank of America hadn't bought up a bunch of banks in Texas because they couldn't branch, and that would be considered branching.
Well, they did multiple things at one time. Once the law changed, they bought banks,
Yeah.
and they might branch that bank, and they got new charters. So they did everything they could to penetrate the market to maximum.
Do you remember like around what time that law changed? Like around what year?
Well, son, it, I really don't exactly. It was later in my career.
Yeah. So like the 80s or 90s.
Yes, I've been retired now close to 30 years. So,
So okay. So that actually reminds me. So you said you tried retirement once. How long were you like in retirement the first time?
well, I retired in my late 40s the first time, and I made the mistake of an office. Then I opened a second office. So I had two offices and was had lots of associations and doing consulting work.
What made you
And
get two offices? What made you get two offices?
well, just different directors and investors wanted me to be near them so I could analyze their deals. Uh, and so then I worked another 10 years and retired finally and permanently in my late 50s. And I resolved no office.
So how long were you retired for?
That first time,
Yeah.
just about a year.
Okay, but you were doing like work during that time still.
Yes, and I was
Yeah.
doing a lot of bank audits and bank analysis. And of course, I was looking for banks to buy.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So, isn't it true that when you were a banker that was like when they changed it from like money from the gold standard?
Well, as I recall, that was back during the Nixon
So
administration,
when
so that was clearly during my lifetime.
yeah, so like did that change anything? Like how y'all did things?
Well, banking became much more adventuresome because you had nothing, all you had standing behind the currency was the gross national product of the United States. And so the U.S. economy is all that stands behind the currency today. And that's why I've talked to you about the dangers of inflation for my grandchildren
Yeah.
because the dollar is greatly inflated and it could be devalued, which means that if if a dollar bought a certain amount of goods and services, if it's devalued by half, then it only buys 50 cents worth.
Yeah.
So that's a real danger for your generation.
And it wasn't like that when it was on the gold standard because it had like gold to back it up.
Well, that's right. You could actually surrender your currency for gold bars if you chose to. So your dollar was just as good as a dollar worth of gold.
That is interesting.
Yeah,
So
it the banking system and the economy has become much more fragile.
yeah.
I I don't write certificates of deposit anymore because I don't trust the banking system. I have to have a bank account uh, for checks and deposits and just to function.
Yeah.
But I don't write certificates of deposit anymore. Uh, Bank deposits are insured up to $250,000 by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, which is a governmental agency, but its reserves on bank deposits is only about 2%. So the FDIC could wind up uh, giving you a note for your deposits. You couldn't get to your money. You just have a promissory note. So the banking system is in great trouble. They
Yeah.
have massive real estate loans in trouble. They have a mismatch between assets and deposits. You know, they're lending long and have deposits that are short. All you have to do is write a check and your deposit is gone.
What do you think kind of caused all of that? Like for the banking system to be more fragile?
Well, I could briefly say, but there are courses taught on that subject,
Yeah.
and of course people have PhDs in finance and economics, so that subject could go on for tens of years. Uh, the national debt, uh, the government just prints money,
Yeah.
and if it wants see, there are a lot of services of the government that the Constitution never permitted it to do. It just invented ways to spend your money. See, the government only gets money that it takes away from you. It
Yeah.
can't create money. So the government has about 35 trillion in admitted debt, and it's running up at least 2 trillion deficit per year. Plus, if we had the time, I could make a little list for you of unfunded liabilities, pensions and off balance sheet debt. The governmental debt is truly about 135 to 140 trillion, and that's scary for my grandchildren and great grandchildren.
So, just as someone who doesn't really understand like the national debt, because we've always like America's always had a national debt, right?
No,
Or how long has that been going
no.
on?
We had a balanced budget as late as Kennedy. Well, let's say Clinton, as late as Clinton.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Clinton and Newt Gingrich, who was Speaker of the House, balanced the budget, which means that if at Pablo's you make $100 in a day, then you don't spend more than $100.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, you save some, you give some away. But if you make 100 and you spend 200, then you owe 100. Well, that's what your government has done. It's spent more than it takes in, so it has debt. Just like normal people have debt on their house or their car.
So how would the government having debt? How would that affect the average person?
Well, many ways. One is taxes go up, and so more of your salary goes to the government, and you get to keep less.
Yeah.
Also, inflation. As I referenced earlier, what you could buy for $1 with inflation takes $2. When your mom goes grocery shopping, she pays about 20% more than she paid last year. So your dollar is just worth less and less. An easy definition of inflation is it's too many dollars chasing too few goods and services.
So does the national debt is that what mostly affects inflation, or?
Well, it's a big factor.
Yeah.
Overspending, governmental programs. See, the government truly doesn't have any money to give away. Its only source of income is you, and other taxpayers. Uh, so inflation is a very scary thing. The thing I say to my grandchildren is do everything you can to protect yourself against inflation. When you can, buy a house. When you can, buy a piece of rural property, buy stocks. Uh, Try to own some assets that will go up as inflation goes up.
Yeah.
See, the year I was born, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was in round figures about $125. $125. Now the Dow Jones Industrial Average is bouncing around 34,000.
Wow.
So make it simpler math. Just say from 100 to 35,000. That is a wild gap.
So like, how does the government like curve the debt or curve inflation like over time?
Well, just like an individual does, it needs to spend within its means. If it takes in taxes of $2 trillion, then it does not spend over $2 trillion. Plus, in addition to not building a bigger deficit, it has to begin to pay on the deficit it already has. In other words, it admits owing $35 trillion, but in fact it owes maybe 135, 145 trillion. Unfunded pensions for municipal workers, and that's just national debt. That does not include municipalities, cities, counties, water districts.
Yeah, that is true. So back to the question I had earlier about the gold standard. So did y'all have to have like a bunch of gold in the bank, like on standby, like in case somebody was like, "Hey, I want my gold"?
Well, you had a variation. There was a time frame when it was against the law to own gold. Only governments
Really?
could own gold.
Was that during the gold standard?
Well, it was during the fluctuation, that's right. And so now, though, individuals not only can, but they do. We talked one time at some length about being a coin collector and collecting gold pieces and silver pieces. You can just own plain bars, but also you can own valuable coins. So for a young man, that would be a wonderful hobby.
Yeah. So did y'all have gold in the banks or no?
Well, that was in the Federal Reserve System. That was the national banking system.
So you would have to go if you want your gold. You have to go to the national
private
bank.
banks did not own gold.
Okay, so it's backed up by the ones in the national banks.
Well, that's right.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we have gold now. We have gold in Fort Knox and other repositories, but we're not on the gold standard, and the gold we own is only a fraction. And see, one of our great worries is that the yen will become the currency of exchange and demote the dollar.
Yeah, well, it's already started, right? Or at least like in some countries, like doesn't Russia use it now? Like,
well, there are many countries that do not settle in dollars. That's right.
Well, if that is happening, is there a way that like the United States can profit on that? Because other countries have benefited from the U.S. having the top currency. So is there a way for the U.S. to benefit in that case?
Well, son, markets thrive on stability, and they plunge on uncertainty and instability. So, just like a family that's in trouble because it has great credit card debt and everything it owns is mortgaged. Got a chattel on its car, has a deed of trust on its house, and so governments have to. You see, you could talk this just, I mean, literally days and days and months. There are courses taught on it.
Yeah.
But that's why, without in this phase getting into politics, that's why Granddaddy is so conservative. The liberals, with their giveaway, are killing us, son. Uh, and it's going to affect you and your children. Uh, doesn't bother me all that much. God has blessed me enough that we can live through it. If my net worth's cut in half, well, grandmother and I'll just tighten our belt a little and we'll make it to the end.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a real challenge for you and your children. Uh, so that's why I may have said this to you, but you remember the famous quote from Churchill. He said, if you're not a liberal when you're 18, you don't have a heart. But he says, if you're not a conservative by the time you're 35, you don't have a brain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
All
quote.
right. Okay, son. What next?
Yeah. Well, so how would your second retirement, how did that go down? Like, was it, did you know you were going to retire, or like, how did you decide that?
Well, it was reasonably certain because when we made our deal that became Wells Fargo, uh, to be senior management there, the home office was in San Antonio. I had no desire to be in San Antonio. Plus, I had had enough of being in the country,
Yeah.
and really, I wanted to do ministry, and so I was able immediately upon retirement, which was nearly 30 years ago. I did 6 years as chairman of the board of the Baptist Mission Center, and so I didn't have to take any pay for that. And then for about 10 years, I went on staff at Sagemont Baptist Church, which is a big mega church, about 25,000 members.
Yeah.
And I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and again, I didn't have to take any salary. The church gave an office and a secretary, but no monetary
Yeah.
compensation. So I've enjoyed retirement. Grandmother and I spend a lot more time together, and I try to be with family. And until recently, we had pretty exhaustive ministries.
Yeah. So, like, what has been your favorite stage in your life? Like, has it been work? Like, were you most happy when you were working, or now in retirement, or what?
Well, Grandmother and I have said many times that if we had to pick a 10-year period in our life that we enjoyed the most, it would have been the 10 years beginning when your mother was born. We had the nicest house we'd ever owned in Ponderosa Forest out near Spring, Texas. Your mother's elementary school was right around the corner, so she and her sisters could either walk or ride their bicycles to the elementary school. We had a wonderful pool. Your mother and I spent massive time at the pool swimming, and she could ride in a little basket on the front wheel of my bicycle. So grandmother and we were young. I know it's hard for children to envision their parents as young people, young married and in love, but we were young, and it was just a marvelous time frame.
Yeah.
But
So,
we've had a good life, son. Grandma and I have had a good life. God has really blessed us with our family and with finances, and so we're very appreciative for the life we've had. This year we've been married 65 years, last August, and we both were 88 this year.
wow.
So we're very thankful.
So, I don't really know exactly what question to ask, but how has your experience like been as a grandparent? Like how? I mean, just expound on that, and then I'll probably ask a question.
Well, it was delightful beyond belief. When I was in the country at the banks, of course I was away at night during the week, so I stayed at really nice bed and breakfast, not like you all have now. Uh, Everything was done for you. You didn't cook.
Yeah.
The owner, the, usually ladies, cooked your breakfast. So grandmother went with me every other week. She tried to go every other week, and so we were able to travel Texas a lot and make friends. And but say your question again, my man. I rambled there.
I was just saying, what has your experience been like as a
Oh,
grandparent?
as a grandparent. Well,
Yeah.
okay, sure. Well, my point was, the grandmother was with me one week, and as we did on Friday, she and I went to Schulenburg on the way home, and I was in the Schulenburg Bank, and she was shopping. She loved to go to the little shops and antique shops in those country towns. So my office in Schulenburg was on the second floor. So one of the girls there at Schulenburg came running up the stairs and said, Mr. Saunders, there's an important phone call here. And it was your Uncle Dave calling that Sarah was in the process of being born. So I went down the street and got grandmother, and we came on to Houston then. And as I remember, when all our grandchildren were born, including you, grandmother went to stay with the mothers for a couple of weeks. And so when Sarah, our first grandchild, was born, uh, I went to San Antonio with grandmother. Uh, my bankruptcy attorneys were in San Antonio, so I put her on a plane in San Antonio, and she flew to Aunt Alice's and took care of her the first 2 weeks she was home, took care of Sarah. And then every time one of you was born, of course, all our grandchildren in Houston had the same, mothers had the same doctor, you were born in the same hospital, and I always tell my friends you were born in the same room. So we got to see all of you, all 9 of you, the first day of your life.
Yeah.
Uh, it, we actually held all 9 grandchildren when they were less than 1 day old.
Oh, that's cool.
So I can't even describe it, son. It's just glorious.
Yeah.
Having your own children is one, and then grandchildren are right under that, and then great grandchildren are right under that.
Yeah.
It's the happiest thing of your life.
Like, do you prefer the relationship of you being a father or a grandfather? Because I'm sure a father is more intimate, but a grandfather is probably easier and more manageable. So, what is your opinion on that?
Well, I don't think, son, you could really pick one over the other because they're just different.
Yeah.
It, it would take a long, long time to explain to you what it's like to be a daddy. Because when my girls were born, I made all kinds of promises to God. I said, you let my Margaret be safe and healthy, and let this baby be healthy and normal. And I really have spent my life trying to honor those promises. So I took being a father very, very seriously, very seriously. And a lot of my buddies picked up golf and the other things, and I really had 3 priorities: God, my family, and then thirdly a career, because without a career I couldn't give generously to God, and I couldn't do properly by my children.
Yeah.
But then grandchildren are I mean, they are precious, precious beyond description.
Yeah.
Because they're a combination of the fine young men that my girls married and my girls, and of course they have some characteristics that remind me of my parents and grandmother's parents.
Yeah.
Heredity is just a fascinating thing from God.
Do you like? That's actually interesting. You brought that up. Do you, whenever you see, like, when you see um, do you think you see the same people multiple times? Like just when you look at a person, you're like, oh, like they look like like their eyes, like they almost look exactly like this person I used to know like decades ago.
Well, there's so many. You're totally correct to begin with.
No.
Yes, yes. But there's so many examples in our family. You and all your siblings have certain characteristics that are like your daddy. You have certain that are like your mother, and all your mom and her sisters all just look alike.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
It's easy to tell that they are sisters, and Aunt Susan looks exactly like your great grandmother McGee. I have pictures of your grandmother when she was a young woman, and you would think it's Aunt Susan.
Really.
So all that's just fascinating.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And there are things about you that remind me of your mom and your dad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is cool. Is that cool to like see like as you've gotten older, like just meeting more people and like I'm sure that's really cool.
Well, it is. It's just delightful. Your mother always had a little joke. Uh, the way my head is shaped, in the back of my head, there is a little knot right in the back of my head, and your mother is the only one who has that knot. So your mother has a little knot there, and she used to tease her sisters. She'd say, "I'm the only legitimate one. I'm the only one that can prove that Daddy is my daddy because I have the family knot."
That's funny.
Yeah, she's a real character. I just adore your mom.
Yeah, me too. So, just for a couple miscellaneous questions. Um, can you just go through like the cars and stuff that you've owned, like the vehicles you've owned during your life? Like just a brief rundown.
Well, I can. Um, when grandmother and I married, I had a Mercury, uh, 1953 Mercury that had been customized. It was a really beautiful piece of artwork. But your mother had a classic. Uh, I think it was a '56 Chevrolet Bel Air, two-tone hardtop.
Mm-hmm.
So we both had nice cars. They weren't new, but they were nice. And I bought mine, and your great granddaddy McGee bought the car for grandmother when she went to Baylor. So, uh, as young marrieds, we were no different than any other young married people. We were on a tight budget. We were trying to save money and prepare for a family and buy a house and give to our church. So we decided we cannot afford two cars. So we will put both of them up for sale, and we'll keep the one that does not sell. Well, mine sold quickly to a person who worked for the bank, actually for his daughter. One of the senior officers of the bank bought it for his daughter. Uh, and we kept grandmother. So we drove grandmother's for a good while. And then the first car we bought was a new car. It was a Mercury. And if you can believe it, a brand new Mercury cost $2,200. $2,200.
And that was a lot.
Well, yeah, it was a lot. We
Yeah.
borrowed on a 3-year. The bank loaned us the money to buy it on a 3-year payback. And so what we did was we paid off that loan in 3 years. And we said, okay, we don't ever want to borrow on a car again. So we just kept right on making, instead of making the payment to the bank, we made it to a mutual fund and savings. So we kept that car 10 years. So first 3 years we paid off the debt. The next 7 years we kept right on making the payments for 10 years, putting the payments in a mutual fund.
Yeah.
So when we bought the next car, we paid cash, and so we paid cash for every car since then. We only had a car loan on the very first one, but the cars we've had, we sort of developed. To begin with, we only drove American made. Had Chevrolets to start with. Grandmother drove an Impala, and I drove a Malibu. And then one of the greatest things that happened to us was uh, one of my benefits was a bank car. And so the bank leased and bought a new and leased a new car every year. We drove a bank car of a Pontiac Grand Prix. It was a two-door hardtop, and it was a great car. And so then the family only had one car, and so uh, we moved then from a Chevrolet Impala to an Oldsmobile 98, and that was one of the first cars your mother drove. We gave her a 98 that we had, and she wanted a sporty, so when she went to Baylor, we bought her Honda Accord. But then from the Oldsmobiles, we stepped up to Cadillac, and we drove Cadillac Brahms for many years. Had a bunch of Brahms, and then our family had mushroomed so much that we needed a wagon, so we went into the Odysseys.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many Odysseys we've owned, 8 or 10, I guess. We've owned 3 since we lived in this house.
Yeah.
But this will be our last one. It only has 30,000 miles, so if we buy another car, we're going to go back to a Cadillac hybrid.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What about the Jag? How long have you had that?
Well, I've had that Jag going on 25 years.
Oh.
There's an interesting story on that.
Yeah.
I'll try to make it quick because I know this is a long tape. When your great-grandmother McGee died, she had a nice equity in a house. So when that house was sold, your grandmother and her brother, your Uncle Milton, got a little inheritance. It wasn't huge, but it was a nice little inheritance. Being primarily the equity in your great-grandmother's house. So on our 40th anniversary, your grandmother said to me, "Roy, you've been buying new cars for the girls and me all these years, and now you deserve a new car." She said, "I've got a surprise for you." And so she drove to Momentum Jaguar. Momentum handled Jags, BMWs, and Volvos, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
We did have one of those along the way too, station wagon. So grandmother had bought it, picked it out. It was sitting on the lot, detailed and ready to roll. So that was in 2000. That was nearly 25 years
That's
ago.
crazy. So what year is it?
It's a 2000.
It's a 2000.
So it's technically 24 years, but it's going to be 25 soon.
So how many miles does it have on it?
Well, it has 80,000, but most of that was put on in the early years. In the early years, that was actually my car. I drove it. I drove it to Sagemont Church during the 10 years I worked for them. And I just run it now enough to keep the battery charged up and keep the oil hot and flowing through the system.
When did you retire it?
When did I retire?
When did you retire the car? When you stopped driving it?
We went through cycles. For a while, I concluded that the only way to try to come out on a car was order the new year. Let's just pick a number just to give a quick example. In 1999, toward the end of the car year, I would order a 2000. So I would have a brand new car on the first truck that brought them into Houston. And then, just before it was 3 years old, I would sell it and order a new one. And the same people bought my cars year after year because they knew I took care of them and they were neat and
Yeah.
low mileage. And so I owned a car for 3 years. Never even had bought new tires.
You don't need to.
It was under warranty a big part of that time, so almost no repairs. And that was our system for long, long years. Buy a new car every 3 years, uh, sell my old one just before it was 3 years old, get the maximum out of the old one, and order a new one.
Yeah.
So we did that for long, long years. And then, I guess, starting before we went into Cadillacs, I decided, okay, my daughters are now married, and they can take these cars and drive them, well over 200,000 miles. So I guess we started that with the Buick, Buick Roadmaster. I gave a Buick Roadmaster to your Aunt Alice. Well, actually, it started earlier than that, though. The girls were still in college. I gave, okay, I bought a new car for your mother, and Aunt Alice and Aunt Susan drove our used station wagon. They had our family car at Baylor. And then when Aunt Susan and Uncle John married, I gave them the Oldsmobile that your mother had driven in high school. So anyway, the point was, I stopped selling the cars and stopped trading them, and gave them to my girls and their husbands, to their family. And you all have had several. You had some Cadillacs.
At Odyssey.
At least two. You remember? I don't know if you were old enough. You had a gold Cadillac.
I remember the white Cadillac.
Okay, well, I guess you must have had three Cadillacs. You had a white one, and you had a gold one, and you had a two-tone gray one. And then after the Cadillacs, we started giving these Odysseys.
Yeah.
Because these Odysseys are wonderful family cars. I mean, we could load all of you up and go to cousins camp in San Antonio.
Yeah, that was great.
Y'all had a place for you to drink, and the inside is such, if y'all spilled a drink, no big deal.
You can just wipe it off.
Yeah, just get a wet towel and wipe it off.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much our car deal.
So what was your favorite one that you owned?
Well, clearly my Jag is.
Yeah.
I've just loved it, and I've taken care of it. That Jag goes less than 1,000 miles a year. One year, I always look at the mileage when I do the new inspection. One year it was only 500 miles, just enough to keep it in shape.
Yeah. So like how much? Like is it like pretty expensive to like maintain it over the years, or?
Yeah, it's very expensive because at the stage right now, you can't get parts for it.
Yeah.
So I take it to a specialized Jag dealer who really works on antique Jags. It's sort of like a hobby.
Yeah.
But he has to go to junkyards and to dealers and fabricators to have parts fabricated or bought.
Yeah.
So it's very expensive.
So like but is expensive for the parts, but do you have to like constantly be working on it, or like?
Well, you do, because even no matter how gentle you are, when a car gets older, the parts just deteriorate.
Yeah.
I mean, belts and hoses just begin to deteriorate sitting in a garage.
Yeah.
But it's always been in the garage, and I've always corrected everything, so it's dandy. It runs beautifully right now, nearly 25 years old.
That's so cool. So if that's your favorite one, do you ever have one that like you ever like reminisce about and miss? Like one of the ones that you sold after 3 years that you were like, that one was really cool. Like,
well, my first car was a lot of fun. I think you always remember your first car.
Yeah.
It was a 1938 Oldsmobile 4-door sedan. And a 38 Oldsmobile had a sun visor, and it had running boards. And we may have talked this on another tape, but to make it quick, my daddy, who owned his own repair garage, independent, did an engine job. new rings, new pistons, and so it ran beautifully. And my Uncle George, who owned a paint and body shop, straightened every dent and nick and did a wonderful multi-coat paint job on it. And to pay him for it, my daddy did a ring and valve job on his car. So I had an old car. I had it in about 52. So what's that? 14 years old in round figures. So it was 14 years old when I bought it. So here is a almost antique that does not have a spot on it, a brand new paint job, a brand new engine, and my buddy Roy Eckerd's mother measured the headliner, and she put a new floral headliner in the car. She had bought some new draperies for her house, and so she decided I needed the headliner more than she needed new draperies. So she put in. So it was like a brand new car.
Yeah.
So next to my Jag, and of course, in addition to just liking the model and sportiness,
Yeah.
it's every time I'm in it, I think of grandmother. The grandmother gave that car to me.
Yeah.
No
It's more
debt.
sentimental.
She
Yeah.
used her inheritance. She could have bought clothes and whatever she wanted,
Yeah.
but she chose to spend it on me, and so I will keep it till close to my death, and then I'll give it to the family.
So, when has there ever been like a time like you almost bought a really cool car but you didn't? Like, is there a time that you like were looking at a car that you wanted to get but you didn't end up buying it?
Well, when grandmother bought that Jag, the hit parade was the top of the line Lexus. And so she really pondered the Lexus instead of the Jag,
Yeah.
but then finally decided that in that day it was unique. And
Yeah. No, she made a good choice.
yeah, she really did,
Yeah.
because they stopped making it immediately thereafter.
Yeah.
So it was an antique way before 25 years.
Yeah. Well, that is cool. So how many cars do you think that you've bought like that you've bought yourself? So not like giving money to grandchildren, but like that you or grandmother went in and bought a car. How many do you think you've actually bought?
Okay, you're not counting the ones I bought for grandchildren.
Yeah, so the rules are that either you or grandmother have to go in and buy it. Like not you paid, not with your money, but you bought it. Is what I'm saying.
Well, okay, does that include the ones I bought for your mother and her sister?
You went in to buy those?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bought them.
Then
sure.
yeah, then
yeah,
so then those count.
I bought 2 Honda Accords at the same time. One for your mother. Well, actually, to be just detailed correct, I bought your mother's first, and I just liked it so much, and it was so sporty
Yeah.
that I bought one just like it, but a different color though, a different color. And I drove it out in the country, and everywhere I went, I got an offer. Somebody wanted to buy that Honda Accord. Well, how many? Oh, me.
Just a rough estimate.
Well, we owned a jillion cars, son, because, on that routine, after, I guess after an Alice was born, we then had to go to 2 cars. I had not yet gotten a bank car, so we went to 2 cars, and then we went back to 1 when I got the bank car. So not counting the bank car, we had Mercury, we had, I don't know, maybe about 6 Chevrolets, had a bunch of Oldsmobiles, had a bunch of Cadillacs, and then I guess we've owned about 8 Honda Odysseys.
Yeah.
Son, I'd have to just sort of count. I bet we've owned 30 cars.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because, owning 2 cars at a time, and actually, if we owned 2 cars, and your mother owned a car, so we really had 4 cars with my girls having 2 cars, and so when you own, and we owned a new Volvo one time, and a Chevrolet station wagon. I bet we've owned 30 for sure.
Yeah, but the most at one time is when Your daughters had them too.
Yeah. We had four at one time as the most.
Yeah.
2 at Baylor, and 2 at home. And when we lived out in Ponderosa, no, Old Oaks. When we moved to Old Oaks, we built a 3-car garage, 3.5 to be exact, because I had a half garage as a workout room, weights and all that sort of thing, bicycle, stationary. So we had 3 cars in the garage, and then, so I guess 4 at one time would be the most.
Yeah. So, 2 last car questions. One, what do you think is a car that you've driven the most in your life, that you put the most miles on?
That Buick Roadmaster, I put 30,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Bought it new, put 30,000 on it, and then gave it to Aunt Alice. So that was the most mileage on a car.
That's cool. And then the last question about cars is, what is your least favorite car that you bought?
That's easy. Do you pronounce it Volvo or Volvo?
I think it's Volvo.
Volvo?
Yeah. I don't really know, to be honest.
Volvo station wagon, made in Sweden, supposed to be top of the line, supposed to be hot stuff.
Yeah.
Stood up in a wreck better than any other car. Bought it brand new, and we had nothing but trouble with
Really?
it. Just trouble.
What year was it?
Oh, goodness. It would be in the 60s, I guess.
Yeah.
In the 60s. So clearly, that was the least. And ironically, in real-time dollars, it's probably the most expensive car I ever owned.
Really?
Because it cost as much as a Cadillac Brougham did.
Yeah.
But we bought it because it was supposed to be Swedish engineering, outstanding engineering.
Yeah.
The survival rate in a wreck was better than any car on the road. So I had little children to protect, and it was most expensive and least desirable.
Yeah. That's funny. Did at least it look kind of cool? Or?
Oh yeah, it was a really special looking car.
It just had a bunch of engine trouble or something, or what was like?
Yes, mostly with the starter.
Oh yeah.
The electrical system more than engine. It was electrical.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll move on from that topic. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you wish I would have about your life or about?
Well, son, I really think that your questions have been exceedingly thorough and comprehensive.
I just know that in the coming weeks and months and stuff, I'm just going to think, why didn't I ask this question? Especially because I listen to all these episodes back, and sometimes I'm like, I could have easily asked this question, but, nothing I can do about that. But
well, you've been very thoughtful to do all this, son. I know, my goodness, you may have spent as much as 10 hours on these 5 tapes. And so I'm very appreciative. And,
something like that.
And it's been fun to talk with you and sort of relive old times and get to know you even better. I really appreciated these times.
Yeah, me too. And, I mean, I have a bad feeling that we missed something big, but...
Well, if we did, we'll talk about it one of these days.
Yeah. Well, for the next episode, we talked about this off the tape, but we can talk about politics and different stuff like that. So that'll be the next episode.
Okay.
And maybe at the beginning, if there's anything that I forgot, I can just ask it real quick. Maybe just a little comb over to go back over everything to make sure we didn't miss anything. But yeah, then I think we'll end it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
No problem.
I appreciate everything.
Oh.